All right. We're diving into a pretty fascinating field today. We're going to be talking about how to prepare for a dredging supervisor interview.
Yeah.
We're going to be using RoleCatcher as our main source today.
Sounds good.
They've got a pretty awesome career guide, tons of sample interview questions, and some really cool AI features that I'm excited to talk about.
Me too. This is a role that's really in demand right now,
Yeah.
and it requires a really unique blend of skills. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to dive into all this.
Yeah. And you know what? For our listener out there, you're looking to level up your career, right? Maybe even literally move some earth. So we're going to help you do just that. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of those interview questions, let's paint a picture for our listener. What does a dredging supervisor actually do on a day-to-day basis?
So imagine you're in charge of this huge operation, out on the water.
Yeah.
You've got teams to coordinate. You've got to make sure everything's working safely and efficiently. You're keeping an eye on the budget, the environment. It's a very dynamic role.
It sounds like it.
You need that technical expertise, but you've also got to be a strong leader.
And speaking of, a field with potential, I was looking through the RoleCatcher guide, and it mentions there's a growing need for skilled dredging supervisors out there.
Absolutely. With so much focus on maintaining waterways these days, coastal resilience, the demand for dredging professionals is just going up. And especially as technology keeps advancing and these projects get more and more complex.
Okay, so that's great news for our listeners.
Yes.
But let's get down to the brass tacks here.
Okay.
We've got a whole stack of interview questions from RoleCatcher.
Right.
I know you've got some killer insights on how to tackle them. What's the first one we should unpack?
Okay, so let's start with a pretty classic one. What inspired you to pursue a career as a dredging supervisor?
All right. Seems simple enough, but I have a feeling there's more to it than meets the eye.
Right. So this is your chance to show some genuine passion. You don't want to just give a generic answer like, oh, it seemed like a good job. You want to think about what really drew you to this field. Were you fascinated by boats and heavy machinery as a kid?
Okay.
Or maybe you're really interested in environmental engineering and you see dredging as a way to make a positive impact.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Find that personal connection
Exactly.
and let it shine through.
Yeah.
And I bet interviewers are also looking for how you handle those follow-up questions.
For sure. So they might ask something like, what aspects of dredging do you find most fascinating? Or, the classic, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So you want to be ready to talk about your long-term goals, show them that you're in it for the long haul.
Okay, great advice. All right, next question. How do you ensure that dredging activities are carried out in compliance with environmental regulations and safety standards? This feels like a pretty important one.
Yeah, that's a crucial one. Dredging, can have a big impact on ecosystems. So you have to demonstrate that you understand the rules, that you're committed to following them. I'd recommend brushing up on key legislation like the Clean Water Act, the Rivers and Harbors Act, and be prepared to explain how you've applied those regulations in past projects.
So it's not just knowing the rules, but showing how you've actually put them into practice.
Yeah.
What are some examples of, really strong answers for this one?
You could talk about a time you identified a potential environmental risk and then you put a mitigation strategy in place.
Okay.
Or maybe you went above and beyond standard safety protocols to protect your team, the environment, that kind of thing. Just show them you take it seriously.
I'm sure they'll have follow-up questions here, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So be ready to discuss specific permits that you've obtained, monitoring procedures that you've implemented,
Right.
how you stay updated on those evolving environmental regulations. They want to see that you're proactive, knowledgeable.
All right. On to a question that I think is all about keeping things on track, making sure things go smoothly. How do you manage dredging operations to ensure they are completed within the given timeline and budget?
Okay, yeah. This is where you really get to showcase your project management skills. Highlight your organization, your ability to plan, allocate resources effectively.
Right.
If you have experience using tools like Gantt charts or any specialized dredging software for tracking progress, that's great to mention.
So they're looking for someone who can handle the big picture, but also pay attention to those details.
Exactly. And don't be surprised if they ask you about a time you faced unexpected delays or budget constraints. Be ready to share a story about how you adapted, how you problem solved, how you kept the project moving forward.
Now, I know RoleCatcher has this really cool AI feature
Yes.
that analyzes job descriptions, helps tailor your answers. I'm imagining that could come in handy here.
It definitely can. So RoleCatcher's AI, it scans that specific job posting
Right.
and it pulls out those keywords, the skills that the employer is really prioritizing. Then you can weave those into your responses, making sure you're hitting all the right notes.
That's amazing.
It's a great tool.
Yeah, it really is a game changer. All right, moving on to question number 4. This one's all about leadership. What is your experience managing a team of dredging professionals? And how do you ensure they work together to achieve project objectives?
Yeah, dredging, it really is a team effort. And they want to see that you can lead, motivate, communicate effectively, share your approach to delegation, conflict resolution, how you build that strong team dynamic.
So what kind of answer would really knock their socks off here?
Think about a time when you successfully navigated a really challenging situation with your team.
Okay.
Maybe you had to overcome some kind of technical obstacle or there was a conflict between team members. You had to resolve it. Focus on how you fostered collaboration and achieved that positive outcome.
Love those real-world examples.
Yeah.
What about follow-up questions they might ask?
So they might ask about your leadership style, how you give feedback, how you handle team members who maybe aren't performing as well as they could be. So just be prepared to talk about your approach, demonstrate that you're a fair and effective leader.
This is great stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm learning a lot, even though I'm not the one prepping for the interview.
Right.
What's the next question we should dive into?
Okay, let's tackle this one. It's about handling those tough situations that inevitably come up. How do you handle difficult situations that arise during dredging operations, such as equipment failure or unexpected weather conditions?
Okay, so thinking on your feet, staying calm under pressure.
Exactly. Dredging projects can be unpredictable.
Right.
They want to know you can handle the curveballs. So have a specific example ready, a time when you faced a major challenge and you navigated it successfully.
And I bet they'll be listening closely to how you describe those steps you took, how you communicated with your team, with stakeholders,
Yeah.
ultimately, how you got to that positive outcome.
Exactly. And don't forget to mention what you learned from that experience. It shows that you're not just good at solving problems, you're also learning and growing from them.
Absolutely. All right, on to question number 6. So this one is, how do you ensure effective communication and collaboration with stakeholders, such as contractors and project managers, during dredging operations? So it's not just your internal team, it's also managing those external relationships.
It is. Dredging projects involve a whole network of stakeholders, government agencies, environmental groups, local communities.
Wow.
Clear communication is key to keeping everybody on the same page.
Absolutely. So how can our listener demonstrate that they're a communication superstar?
You want to share examples of how you've built strong relationships with stakeholders, how you've addressed their concerns, kept them informed throughout the project. Maybe you implemented a new communication system. Maybe you successfully negotiated a solution that worked for multiple parties.
Okay, those are great examples. Now I'm curious, could RoleCatcher's AI feedback feature help with this particular question?
Absolutely. So RoleCatcher can actually analyze your response, suggest ways to make it even stronger. Maybe it recommends highlighting specific communication skills like active listening or conflict resolution. Or it might even suggest adding quantifiable results to show your impact.
Oh, wow, that's impressive.
It's very helpful.
Okay, let's move on to question number 7. This is all about staying ahead of the curve. How do you stay up to date with the latest dredging techniques and technologies, and how do you incorporate them into your operations?
This is where you really show your commitment to continuous learning.
Okay.
Highlight your go-to resources for staying informed. Industry conferences, journals, online forums, but most importantly, explain how you've applied what you've learned to make things better, more efficient, safer, better for the environment.
Right. So they're looking for someone who's not just keeping up with the trends, but actually putting that knowledge to work.
Exactly. Be prepared to talk about specific technologies you've implemented, training programs you've started, or even how you've fostered a culture of innovation on your team.
Great. Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground already. We still have more interview questions to conquer. But before we move on, any final thoughts for our listener on this first batch of questions?
My biggest piece of advice: practice. Practice, practice. The more you rehearse your answers, the more confident and articulate you'll be in that interview. And don't forget to use RoleCatcher's AI features to fine-tune your responses and get that personalized feedback.
Solid advice. Now take a moment to let all this great info sink in, and we'll be right back to tackle even more interview questions in our dredging deep dive.
Sounds good. All right, welcome back. I hope you're ready for round 2 of these interview questions.
You bet. And just to remind our listener, we're going through RoleCatcher's sample interview questions for that Dredging Supervisor role.
Right. Along with their super helpful career guide, of course.
Of course, of course. And we're also showing how those AI features from RoleCatcher can give you a real edge in your prep.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, what's the next question on our list?
So this one's all about handling the big picture, keeping everyone happy. It's how do you manage stakeholder expectations and ensure that project objectives are met within the given time frame and budget?
Yeah, sounds like a recipe for stress.
It can be.
How can our listeners stay, cool and collected when answering this one?
I think the best thing is to think back to a project where you really had to juggle a lot of demands, right? How did you keep stakeholders in the loop? How did you handle those inevitable scope changes or unexpected issues that popped up? The key is to show you can adapt, communicate clearly, and keep everyone informed, even when things get a little tough.
So transparency is key here.
Absolutely. And, don't be shy about talking about the strategies you use to manage those expectations right from the start. Did you set clear milestones? Did you make sure those communication channels were open? These things can really help prevent surprises and keep the project running smoothly.
All right, on to question 9. Time to brag a little. What is your experience in managing large-scale dredging projects, and how do you ensure their successful completion?
Right. This is your time to shine. Talk about those big, complex projects you've led. Think about a specific one. What were the challenges? How did you manage all those teams, subcontractors, and probably a massive budget?
Yeah, I bet they're looking for specific examples of, how you overcame obstacles, how you achieved success.
Definitely. Did you implement a new safety protocol that prevented accidents? Did you come up with a creative solution that saved time or money? Really focus on the results and how your leadership made a difference.
Okay, last question on our list, and we're back to leadership, but this time with a focus on, growth and mentorship. The question is, what is your approach to managing and motivating a team of dredging professionals? And how do you ensure their continued development?
Yeah, it's a good one. A great dredging supervisor doesn't just manage tasks, they really invest in their team's development.
Right.
So share your leadership philosophy. Do you prioritize open communication? Do you provide regular feedback? What about opportunities for professional development?
I bet concrete examples are key here, too.
Totally. So talk about a time you mentored someone, maybe they took on a new role, or you helped a team member learn a specific skill, or did you put a training program in place that really boosted the whole team's expertise? You want to show them that you're invested in building a strong and skilled team for the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been awesome. I feel like we've given our listener, a ton of ammo to go into that interview.
I hope so. Practice makes perfect, though. Remember that. Rehearse those answers, tweak them using RoleCatcher's AI, and you'll walk into that interview feeling confident and prepared.
Speaking of RoleCatcher, we've talked a lot about those interview questions and the AI features, but their career guide has some great stuff too. Let's take a quick detour and see what nuggets of wisdom we can find.
Yeah, for sure. I think the pros and cons section is so valuable. It's important to know what you're getting into, right? The good and the bad.
Right, right. So let's break it down. What are some of the standout pros of being a dredging supervisor?
Well, we already touched on the high demand, right?
Why?
So that means great job security, high earning potential. The guide also mentions travel opportunities, which can be pretty cool even internationally.
Oh, wow. And I imagine, seeing those tangible results of your work, a restored waterway or a new harbor, that's got to be incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's important to be realistic about the cons, too. The guide mentions long hours, exposure to harsh weather, and it's physically demanding work.
Yeah. And there's always that potential for, hazardous situations.
Yeah.
Safety's got to be top of mind.
Exactly. So it's not the right career for everyone, but if you thrive in a dynamic, hands-on environment and you're passionate about making a real impact, it can be amazing.
Okay, so pros and cons, check.
Yeah.
What other gems can we find in RoleCatcher's career guide?
The guide also has some really good advice on moving up in your career, advancing. It talks about the importance of continuous learning, going to industry conferences, building a strong portfolio of your work.
Oh, a portfolio. That's like a visual resume showing off your experience.
Yeah, exactly. And it can really help you stand out, especially as you move up to those, more senior positions.
Right. And speaking of different career stages, the guide actually lays out a nice little roadmap of how responsibilities change from entry level to junior to senior roles.
Yeah, it's great for visualizing your career path, understanding the skills you'll need at each level.
So helpful. This is all fantastic advice for anyone thinking about a career as a dredging supervisor. Okay, we've covered a lot, but before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to go back to one of RoleCatcher's AI features that we haven't really touched on, the video practice tool.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It lets you actually record yourself answering interview questions,
Oh, wow.
and then you get AI feedback on your delivery, your tone, even your body language.
So it's like having a virtual interview coach.
Yeah,
You can practice, refine your answers, really boost your confidence.
exactly. It's a fantastic resource, and it really pairs well with the other AI features we talked about, like the job description analysis and the answer feedback.
Okay, I think we've really, truly squeezed all the juice out of RoleCatcher. Any final thoughts before we move to the last part of our deep dive?
Just this, preparation is key. The more you know about the role, the company, the industry, the more comfortable you'll be in that interview.
And remember, RoleCatcher is your go-to for all things career-related,
Yeah.
from career guides and interview questions to AI-powered feedback and video practice. They've got everything you need to succeed in your job search. All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dives into becoming a dredging supervisor.
Yeah,
We've really covered a lot of ground,
we have.
from the day-to-day of the job to those tough interview questions.
Mhm.
And of course, how RoleCatcher can really help you uh, ace that whole process.
Exactly. Their career guide's been super helpful. Those interview questions were spot on. And those AI features, I mean, those are game changers.
Yeah, I think we've given our listener a real leg up, in their journey to land that dream job.
Yeah, I think so too.
But before we send them off to conquer that interview,
Yeah.
I want to kind of step back for a minute.
Okay.
Just reflect on what we've learned. What's been the biggest takeaway for you?
It's funny. I came in thinking this was all about, big machines and complex engineering. But what's really struck me is how much this job is about people.
It's true.
A dredging supervisor's success, it really comes down to leadership, motivation, communication, collaboration.
Yeah. Like we saw how those human skills are just woven through every single part of the job.
Totally.
From managing the team to dealing with stakeholders to handling those curveballs that are just going to happen.
Right. And it's not just about getting the work done. It's about, building a culture of safety, being responsible for the environment, fostering that, positive and supportive work environment for your team.
Right. Inspiring people to do their best.
Absolutely.
This brings me to a final question for our listeners to think about. Beyond the technical stuff, what personal qualities do you think are essential for being a successful dredging supervisor? And how would you show those off in an interview?
That's a great question to consider because, honestly, a lot of times it's those things you can't just list on a resume, right?
Right.
Resilience, adaptability, integrity, a passion for learning. Those are the things that really make someone stand out.
Exactly. So think about how you can work those qualities into your answers. Show them not just what you can do, but who you are, what you believe in.
Yeah, those values are so important.
Well, we've given you a ton to think about, but remember, RoleCatcher has even more resources to help you out.
They do.
So explore their website, dive into those career guides, practice with their AI tools, and go into that interview feeling confident and prepared.
Mm-hmm. And best of luck from both of us.
We know you're going to do great.